Kicking is one of the most popular techniques in martial arts and MMA, but in a real street fight, it's one of the dumbest things you can do unless it meets a very strict set of criteria most people ignore or don't understand. Let's check it out. Now, before some of you start losing your minds, let me make the context absolutely clear. This is about real-world combat, where you're up against a vicious attacker who's trying to end you, not score points. And before you rush to the comments with war stories about how you vanquished your attacker with a kick, or how some MMA fighter knocked out so-and-so in a cage fight, spare me. I've knocked out people with kicks too, BFD. But I was a teenager and I was lucky and I grew up. If you still think kicking is smart in a self-defense situation, this video is gonna hurt your feelings. There are over a dozen reasons why kicking is risky in a self-defense situation. But because we live in an age of dopamine chasing attention spans, I'm just gonna cover a few. And to be clear, I'm only demonstrating the dangers of low-lying kicks, the ones I actually endorse under very strict combat conditions. As for the absurd stuff, any kick thrown above the waist or spinning, forget it. If you're throwing that in a real fight, you're not just an idiot, you're a walking liability. That kind of suicidal stupidity doesn't even deserve discussion, and I'm not gonna waste my time on it. One of the first concerns is loss of balance. For example, if I throw a low-line push kick at Tommy's knee, a very efficient kick, and he advances at the wrong time, I can get bumped back. So from a fighting stance, Tommy, back up a little bit. I'm gonna throw the kick, he advances, and as I throw the kick, he advances forward, I'm bumped back. Again, it's just bad timing. It's a risk of kicking. Another one is I can actually slip off the target line. For example, if I throw it back up a little bit again, Tommy, I throw the kick, he advances, and I slip off, he can get the shot in. So again, kicking is vulnerability. You have to keep this in mind whenever you decide to throw a kick in a real-world confrontation. The next concern is the recovery window. Again, when you throw a kick, there's the execution phase and then there's the retraction phase. The retraction phase has vulnerability. It's a small gap in time, but it still exists. So Tommy's in a stance. As I throw the kick, I land it, but there has to be the retraction. I have to bring it down, and that's when there's vulnerability. So Tommy, let's try it again. From the fighting stance, again, it's the retraction phase that has you vulnerable. So I throw the kick, that split second is where I'm gonna be in trouble. Again, keep this in your mind when you're going to throw kicks in a real-world confrontation. The next concern is weight transfer. Every kick requires you to shift weight. Even the most efficient kicks require some type of weight transfer, and that is where there's danger and vulnerability. So when I'm gonna throw that efficient push kick to the leg, that shifting back to raise that knee is where there's inherent danger. Be aware of it. Next, we have breaking forward pressure. In real-world combat, you need to get the situation over fast. That requires you to go through the fire, crash through the line. And I've mentioned this in many of my books and videos. When you throw a kick, it requires you to shift weight back. That is not giving you forward momentum. It's antithetical to that. We want to be able to go through. So when you throw that kick, it's taking away that strategy. The next concern is, what if Tommy crashes the line first while I'm in mid-kick? It happens. From a fighting stance, I'm gonna throw this kick, he runs in forward, that's it for me. I'm gonna get plowed. So again, the kick has to be done efficiently, effectively, and safely, non-telegraphically, but again, there's risk involved if he crashes first. Other considerations are the clothing you're wearing, the terrain you're fighting on, if you're wearing dress shoes, and even poor lighting. Every street fight is different, every environment is different, and if you're gonna throw a kick, you have to be certain that these conditions meet perfect standards if that kick is to be delivered efficiently, effectively, and safely. Again, these are vulnerabilities of kicking in a street fight. There's also flexibility and age limitations. Knowing how to kick means nothing if your body can't back it up when it counts. Age, flexibility, past injuries, they all factor in. You might pull off a textbook low kick in the gym, but under real-world stress, when you're cold, adrenalized, or dealing with hip or back problems, that kick could fail. Your body doesn't care about your ego, especially when it's 52 degrees, you're wearing dress shoes, and there's gravel underfoot. And keep in mind that everything I just showed you applies to the most efficient, battle-tested kicking techniques in my arsenal. These are CFA's low-line kicks used under strict criteria with tactical awareness. Now imagine the exponential risk when people throw kicks from other martial arts styles or combat sports. If the safest kicks carry this much risk, what does that tell you about the rest of the kicks out there? Now, are there situations where a kick can be used? Yes, but under very strict conditions. In my contemporary fighting arts system, we teach 4 low-line kicks, but they're only used in specific circumstances where the terrain, timing, and proximity make them viable. These are tactical tools, not habits. And if you don't meet the criteria, you don't throw it, period. Hey, we're about to get back into the video, but let me ask you something. Do you want to legitimately accelerate your self-defense skills? And are you sick of clickbait videos teaching absolute garbage? Or tired of being misled by unqualified wannabe experts who have zero credibility or experience? If the answer is yes, now is the time to join my War Machine memberships. As a member, you're going to get exclusive access to in-depth training videos, exclusive full-feature video content, downloadable training PDFs, and direct insights you're not going to find anywhere else. Plus, you're going to have direct access to me in the comments section of all my videos. So if you have questions, you're going to get real, detailed answers from me and not some random keyboard warrior. So if you're serious about mastering real-world combat skills, hit the join button below and start training like a true war machine. Now, let's get back to the lesson. For those of you who actually want to learn when a kick makes sense in a real-world encounter, I cover all of that in my book, 1001 Street Fighting Secrets. No theory, no sport, just what works. I'll put a link in the description down below if you'd like to check it out. So, what are some of the situations that justify kicking in a self-defense situation? First, we have the pre-contact phase of self-defense during a first strike. Tommy gets into a stance and he's taking a step back. For whatever reason, I can't reach him with a first strike. I can't finger jab, or he's not close enough for a short arc hammer fist or an elbow. These are all first strike techniques that are delivered at either punching or grappling range. Let's say I need to get this fight over with for a variety of different reasons, but he's at the kicking range. That would justify throwing that push kick. That would justify throwing the vertical kick. These are circumstances that are unavoidable and you have to take the risk of throwing the kick. Another justification for throwing a kick in a fight is because it's a range-based finisher, meaning in the course of a compound attack, you want to maintain the offensive flow. I talk about this in many of my books and videos. You need to keep the pressure on. So let's say this scenario is I'm de-escalating with Tommy, but I'm going to launch a first strike justifiably. So here I throw a finger jab, I throw a body shot, but he backs out of the range. I follow up with a hook kick because he's vulnerable. There's a window of opportunity for me that I'm going to exploit. Again, we always want to maintain the offensive flow. Another example where you can use kicking techniques is in a combat-specific scenario. For example, let's say Tommy and I were engaged in a fight. He pulled out a knife, and in the course of the fight, he fell to the ground. The knife is still in his hand, or he's reaching for the knife. This is a case where something like punting, it's a vertical kick that you drive right to the chin. Now, this technique is a deadly force technique. In fact, one of my students performed this technique against an attacker who had a knife, and that attacker is now in a wheelchair. So it's a deadly force technique, and it's another example how kicking can be used under specific situations. Facing multiple attackers is incredibly dangerous, and sometimes a kick can be applied to keep the opponent away momentarily. For example, let's say I'm dealing with this individual here, but his partner comes out. That kick to his knee will give you a moment to keep the pressure off and allow you to escape the situation or deal with them one-on-one. If a kick doesn't meet strict mission-critical conditions, it has no place in real-world combat. This isn't up for debate, it's a survival standard. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.